Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about when writing relationships fall apart. So, we have been talking about the benefits of having multi author papers, how you get it structured, how you set expectations, deadlines, etc. But sometimes things go bad. And what does that look like, right? What are some examples of things that can go bad, and what can you do about it, or what can you think to do about it? I am Leigh Hall, PhD. You can find me via email, leahhall39@gmail.com. Please feel free to ask me any questions you'd like to see addressed on this show. And also my blog, leahhall.wordpress.com, where I discuss issues of teaching and learning in higher education. So let's talk about when writing relationships fall apart, because some of the most difficult things about this is it'll happen with people that you are really good friends with, that you really like, that are really smart, that really do have a lot to offer, but things are just not working out. And so I've got here three common examples that could happen to you. So, number one, your author on your paper might totally go missing in action, right? Like, just might disappear. The work was due, it's not there. You've called, you've emailed, you've left smoke signals. There's nothing, no response, okay? Can't find the person's not talking to you. All right. And then there's another kind where they don't go missing, but they're just not turning stuff in, right? You've set deadlines and it's not coming. And so what this normally will look like is they'll say, they might reach out to you in advance and say, I just need 1 more week or 2 more weeks. And you say, okay, because that's probably fine. And then that doesn't happen. And then you may have to reach out to them and they say, oh, well, this, that, and the other happened. I just need 1 more week. I just need 2 more days. And eventually it's 1 month, it's 2 months, it's not getting done. They keep putting it off and promising, but they're not following through. And then the other thing is they turn it in, let's say they meet the deadline, but it's really, really bad. Okay. It's really substandard. Now, of course, when you're doing a co-authored paper, as the first author, you should expect to have to give feedback for revisions that have to be made by, by the person that wrote the material. You should expect to do some editing yourself. But sometimes you find that you're working with somebody that they basically just look like they slopped it out the last minute, right? They had a deadline. They didn't really, I don't know what happened, but they didn't get it done, and they threw something on the paper and they sent it to you. And that's kind of what it looks like. So, what do you do when things like this happen? Because it can be really difficult if it's somebody that is a really good friend, or even if, I've been in a situation before where it's not necessarily a really good friend, but it is somebody that I really like personally, so it's really hard. You feel like you're being the bad guy. But remember, I'm going to jump down to this fourth point here. It's not personal, okay? If I'm having an issue with you as a writer on a paper or a book, it's not personal. It's about the work not getting done. Either the work's getting done when it needs to be done, with the quality that needs to be done, or it's just not. Okay. And I think that's the best way to look at it. Now, the people that you have to communicate these sorts of things to, they're not necessarily going to take it that way no matter what you say. They might take it personally. You can't control that. But I think when you're delivering this kind of news, when you're having these kinds of issues and you need to have these kinds of discussions, keep it focused on the work. All right. And so I would try to understand, first of all, what is happening, right? Because maybe if you have a bigger picture, you can figure out with the author something that might work. But in my experience, if somebody's totally missing, or they keep saying, oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, while understanding that bigger picture might give you some empathy, it's most likely not going to result in the work getting done. That's just my experience. So you can determine if the author can stay on the paper or not. You might say, well, this is the absolute deadline. Can you get it done by this? And if you can't, then you're not going to be able to be on the paper anymore, or you're not going to be able to be a part of this book anymore. You really, in these situations, are most likely going to have to remove the author, okay? The substandard material, obviously if you're going to use the material, then you don't want to remove the author, but you may, if substantive editing has to be done, if you're doing most of the rewriting, then it might be necessary to put the author in a different position, right? Instead of third author, maybe they become fourth author or something of that nature. But then I think the other thing to think about is going forward from here, even if your problem author stays on for the whole paper and ends up with a publication credit, you then need to evaluate if you want to work with this person again. And that's not something that you need to say to them. You don't need to say, I will never work with you again. But it's just something that you need to be mindful about in terms of if you really want to invite this person to work with you again, because in my experience, you don't. It's not that you don't want to be friends with them. You just can't work with them. It just, the writing relationship just doesn't gel for you. And also if they invite you. So I've been on the flip side where I've been invited, and, I know that the way that that particular person worked was very different than how I worked, and that the likelihood that it would be done in what I saw as a reasonable timeline was probably not going to fit. And so I just asked to, be the very, very last author, in a chain of authors, and to have very minimal involvement with the piece. I laid out what my terms could be in that relationship. So that's another thing to think about. If you're working with an author, if an author invites you to work on a piece with them and you have had a negative experience with them in terms of writing, but you really like the idea, you really want to be a part of it, think about what can you do so that you can be a part of it but not be frustrated, and also be okay if it takes a long time to get done or even doesn't get done at all. And so you can do things like say, well, I'll go on, I'll be the last author on this piece, I'll write the conclusion section, I'll give you guys some feedback. You can sort of keep it to a minimum. So these things happen. Keep in mind, it's not personal. Nobody's out to get you. Nobody's out to sabotage your paper or your book or anything like that. It's just that the author that's having these difficulties is having these difficulties for any number of reasons. It has nothing to do with you. Keep focused on the work. Make it about the work. And hopefully what you can do is get out of the situation with your friendship intact and this understanding about, how you need to frame your working relationship going forward. All right, so that's it for now. Please feel free to subscribe to this channel so you can get more updates. And check out my blog, leahhall.wordpress.com, for more discussions on issues like this.